because I think a lot of people don't totally understand fully, okay, why is the reason you would want to bother getting an MFA degree? Because it's not cheap. I mean, if you guys want to attend a top tier program in the US, it's a big financial investment. So, understandably so, I think people want to know, well, if I get an MFA in studio art, what is that actually going to do for me in terms of my career? One of the most obvious reasons I think to get the MFA degree is if you want to teach studio art at the college level. You have to have an MFA degree. They will not even look at you if you don't have an MFA degree. And so that really qualifies you to do that. And I can definitely tell all of you that I saw a huge difference after I had my MFA. I mean, part of it was that I did definitely look at things differently because I thought to myself, oh, well, I don't have an MFA, therefore I'm not eligible to apply to these positions. But then after I had my MFA, I knew this whole world of job opportunities opened up that I never really had before. And so that is a very technical reason to want to go to an MFA program. I think for a lot of students, though, it's a way to, number one, have really focused, concentrated time that you can work on your pieces and dig deeper and be much more independent with your studio practice. Because obviously it really depends on what BFA program you end up going to. But from what I know from teaching at several BFA programs is that a lot of BFA programs, you're taking, say, 3 studio classes per semester. Maybe you're taking an artist book class. Maybe you're taking a painting class. And so your attention is very divided when you're doing a BFA program. And oftentimes it can feel very fractured. Now, I think at the BFA level, that's a great thing because honestly, at that stage, people just need to get exposure to what is actually out there. I mean, when I went to art school, I had no idea what intaglio printmaking was. I'd never heard of lithography before. So for me, a big part of the BFA experience was just getting myself acquainted with what was actually available. But in terms of really digging deep into content and gaining another level of mastery with my practice, I definitely needed a graduate school for that. I mean, it also depends on the field, though, because for fine art, yes, you probably want to get your MFA if that one of those two things is important to you, teaching college or really having that chance to focus and dig deep with your work. But for example, I have a lot of students who major in illustration, and they say to me, oh, well, do I need to get an MFA? And the answer is no. If you guys are interested in doing illustration, in the illustration field, nobody cares what degree you have. I mean, it's not like people are going to hold it against you or anything like that, but in the illustration field, at least in terms of editorial illustration, children's book illustration, they care much more about professional experience. They want to see your client list. They want to see what publications you've been in. The MFA degree is not going to get you hired to do an editorial gig at the New Yorker. That does not matter. It's your portfolio that really matters. And I think the thing about MFA programs is you'll see that there is a limit to the types of programs that are out there, and a lot of them are very different. There are some that are, okay, this is an MFA in painting, or this is an MFA in printmaking. But I know there are some schools that leave it very vague and undefined. Like they'll say, okay, this is an MFA in new media. And really for a lot of places, new media is not something ultra specific. And even in a painting MFA program, you don't necessarily need to make the assumption that you have to be painting, like as in painting with a brush and oil paint. There's a lot of painting graduate programs where people really are not painting traditionally with a brush and oil on canvas. Maybe they're doing something else. And so it really varies depending on your interpretation. People think about things very differently, but that's definitely a consideration. So the other reason I think to go to graduate school is also the professional connections that you make. Because here's the thing, yes, you can make professional connections as an undergrad, absolutely. But the thing is, when you're an undergrad, you're in a very different place. because for a lot of people, undergrad is like this big event, but the idea is that there's a lot that comes afterwards. Graduate school, that's the final step in your academic art career, and the idea is that you're going to launch out of graduate school into the professional art world. And so that transition is much more immediate. I know when I got out of art school, I just wanted to stop and think and breathe for a year and not do anything else, because I just felt like my brain was overloaded with way too much that was going on. And so I actually ended up taking 4 years off before I went and did an MFA program. And that's another piece of advice I'd give you guys, is that I would not be in a rush to go straight from a BFA program to an MFA program. In fact, I think that's a big mistake. What I tend to tell a lot of my students who are undergraduates is, listen, take at least a year off. It's really, really helpful, because if you apply to go right away, basically your senior year of undergraduate degree program, you are applying for your MFA in February. And that is not fun, because you have so much more going on. A lot of people, their senior year in an undergrad program, they're working on a thesis, maybe they're doing a degree project or something like that. And it's really disruptive to have that happen. And there's a couple other reasons why I would not go in. I think, first of all, it's really good to get some job experience and to beef up your resume a little bit, because I know, because I worked for 4 years before I went to an MFA program, I knew how to interview, I knew how to apply for jobs, put together my resume, I knew how to install works into a gallery. I got a lot of professional experience that I never would have gotten in school. And so what that meant was, after I finished my MFA program, I got right into the job market, because I knew exactly what to do. And I know for a lot of my friends that went straight from BFA to MFA, it was really hard for them, because they had never really had a professional job. They'd never done a professional exhibition before. I mean, I look at some of the work I did between my BFA and my MFA, and it just makes me cringe. I just hate all that work now that I look back on it. But the thing is, that work was really important, because I learned how to be an independent artist outside of art school. And I think that that is very important, because I think the thing is, it's one thing to do well in art school. It's another thing to really know how to exist outside of that structure. Because I definitely know that some people who did very well in a school environment really struggled later on. And it's because when you get out, there's no structure. Nobody's breathing down your neck to make you do something. And so it's a very different type of rhythm that you have to get used to. And I know other people who were pretty good in art school, they did fine, but who did very well after school. So I guess the way to think about it is that the skill set that it requires to be a successful student, it's not the same skill set as it is to be a successful professional. And so that's why I say to students, take 1 year, maybe 2 years off. I actually think I took a little bit too long. I think if I had to do it over again, I would have done 2 or 3 years. I think 4 years was pushing it a little bit. I mean, I had a teaching job at an elementary school that I really liked, and so I feel like that was maybe influencing part of my decision. So I definitely would think about that. For those of you guys who are watching, feel free to jump into the chat box, ask me your questions about MFA programs, about how to choose a field, how to choose a school. There's a lot of stuff going on that I think a lot of people don't tell you about. And I think for a lot of students, when they do apply for an MFA program, they're doing it when they're off on their own and they don't have the support of, say, your undergraduate professors. And so another tip I would give you guys, if you want to do an MFA program, keep in touch with your professors from your undergrad degree, because I've had students contact me asking for a reference for grad school, and they're like, oh, I had you 10 years ago. I'm like, I don't remember who you are. And I feel terrible about it. But the thing is, if I had you 10 years ago and you haven't kept in touch with me and I don't know who you are or what you've been up to, I don't feel I'm in a good position to write you a reference letter that's going to be helpful. So I actually, in the past, I have turned down students. I've said, look, I'm really sorry. I just don't feel that I can really speak well about what you're doing because I just don't know a lot about it. And so if you guys keep in touch with your undergraduate professors, when the time comes to ask for that letter, that's a really good thing to do. I mean, I wanted to keep in touch with my undergrad professors anyway. I didn't only keep in touch with them because I wanted a letter. I definitely wanted to keep up a dialogue with them, and it was great because I'd keep in touch, I'd show them my work and everything, and that was my lifeline back to the academic art community. So that definitely helped me a lot. And then another option that honestly I didn't even know about until I started teaching college was there are a couple of post-baccalaureate programs you can go to. So post-bac program is basically a program that is in between the BFA and the MFA. And it's a year-long program. There aren't a million of them, but there's a bunch. Like I remember when I was at school, the Museum of Fine Arts, they had actually their post-bac program was pretty big. But I feel like there's one at Brandeis University that I know of, and I'm sure there are other post-bac programs out there. But I think the post-bac program, it's very, very helpful, especially if, let's say, you did your undergrad degree was in liberal arts. And so you didn't get to log as many studio hours because you were taking all these academic courses. The post-bac program, it's almost like a mini MFA. It's like a little taste. So you have 1 year, you work on your studio, and for a lot of people, the purpose behind the post-bac program is to develop work in preparation for the portfolio. And by the way, for an MFA portfolio, you guys should not be just picking stuff you made in your BFA classes. It really should be work, I think, that is made outside of class. Because what you don't want to do for an MFA portfolio is have pieces that look like a big patchwork quilt. It really is the opposite of the undergrad portfolio, which we try to push, okay, diversity, many different media, and try all these different subjects. And MFA portfolio is not like that. You want to, for example, not have the still life that you did to learn color theory. You don't want to have figure gesture drawing sketches that were obviously done from a nude model in class. You want to have stuff that really shows your voice and shows that you were going beyond a prompt that you were given by your professor. So I do think there's a certain level of cohesion that does have to be present in an MFA program portfolio. I don't think it has to be like a professional sense of cohesion, but it's got to show that you've gone beyond, oh, I'm taking stained glass and architecture and graphic design this semester. Like, you don't want to look so disparate in a way. And I think mostly, I mean, this is what I should have done. This is what I regret doing in my MFA portfolio. I definitely did not engage enough critically with my work. I feel, looking back on it, I was still a little bit too obsessed with technique. And technique is important in everything, but really, I think one of the main purposes of doing an MFA program is so that you can engage in a critical discourse with faculty, with your peers. And the thing is, if you're making artwork that doesn't engage in that way, you're not a good candidate for an MFA program, because nobody's going to have a critical discourse about this still life where all the students were assigned to draw a vase and this, and please use orange and yellow. Like, that's so clearly a technical exercise that is intended to do something really specific. So you definitely want to avoid a lot of that. And I also think that you need to have themes that you're working on. I don't think you should have 18 themes. I think that's a little bit all over the place, but a general sense of where you're going. I mean, I think one of the best parts actually of doing the application is writing the statement, because I think, for me at least, when I write things down, I definitely can solidify my thoughts. Like, if I'm just thinking in my head, oh, I've got this theme, this might be interesting, it just feels so vague and undefined. So if I actually have to write down and explain to somebody what my artwork is about, things get a lot easier, because then you actually have to be concrete about what you want to say. And by the way, you guys, that written statement that you have to write for your MFA application matters. And don't write about how you want to be in an environment with other creative people, because you know what? That's what everybody writes on their statement for graduate school. Don't write about that. I'm not saying you can't mention it, but you should really consider something that's a lot more specific to you. Don't write the cliche. The cliche is, oh, I'm so excited to be stimulated by all these other artists and be in a creative dialogue. I mean, that's a given. That's exactly why people go to graduate school. So you have to talk beyond that, I think, for the MFA program. And then the other piece of advice I would give for applying is that I did not realize at the time when I applied for MFA programs how insanely competitive these programs are. And it's not because nobody's qualified, because honestly, most people, if they've gotten to that point where they can apply for an MFA, you usually have done your work. I mean, you have to have gotten a BFA. You have to have gotten that far to do that. And so really at that point, most people are qualified. I mean, there are a lot of people who aren't, obviously, but I think a lot of people are. And I think that for the written statement, oh, I'm sorry, we're not talking about written statements. We're talking about getting in. The problem is there's so few slots, and every year more and more people are applying. I mean, the numbers are just terrifying. Like, you're looking at medical school type of numbers. Like, I had a friend who went to Harvard Medical School, and she showed me like some of the numbers of, okay, well, this number of applicants, these people got in. I mean, some of the MFA programs are like that. And the thing is, it's nothing against you. Like, I really thought, I mean, maybe I was just totally oblivious. I didn't think I was going to have a major problem getting into grad school. And it was hard for me. And I have a lot of people who I think are really incredible artists who also had a really hard time. I know people who applied 3 years and weren't able to get into the program they wanted to get into until that third year. Now, of course, it really depends on people's situations. Some people, the financial aid plays a big part of it. Sometimes it's the timing of the program. I know people who have turned down certain schools because they wanted to go do something else or they had a better offer. So this is all very generic type of advice that I'm giving you guys, but I think for the most part, you really should wait until you get into a program that you really think is a good fit. And so I would just leave your options open. I felt this almost desperation the year I applied. I was like, I have to go this year. And I don't know why I thought that. In retrospect, I have no idea why I put that pressure on myself. I really should have given myself the option of saying, well, if I don't get into the schools that I want to get into this year, I can always apply next year. Nobody ever told me that. I mean, maybe it's my fault that I didn't think about it that way, but when I talk to students, former students who are applying to MFA programs, that's one of the first things I say to them. I say, don't take it personally if you don't get in the first year, if you don't get into the programs you want to get into. It takes time. And so I just wouldn't take that personally, because I definitely took it personally, and I felt like, oh my God, I did everything wrong. I'm a bad artist. I didn't do a good job or something like that. So don't worry about that at all. And then the other thing I would say, sorry, looking at my notes, is definitely think about who you ask to be a reference for graduate school, because sometimes people are at a different place where, let's say they've been out of school for a while, they've been doing work and everything, and I can't believe the way some people pick their references. Like, I knew somebody who told me, oh, well, I worked at this restaurant for a few years, and so I asked the manager there to write me a letter of rec for this MFA program. And I said to them, why didn't you ask me? Like, I would totally write you a letter of rec. This was a student who I knew very well. And they said to me, well, I really feel like, because I've worked with this restaurant manager for so many years, that they really know me very well, and I have not worked with you quite as much. And yes, that's true, but in the eyes of an MFA graduate committee, they care much more about a former professor's opinion of you than the restaurant manager. Now, it probably is true. The restaurant manager probably does know the student much better than me, but pick your references appropriately, because I really am surprised a lot of the times that people don't do such a great job of that. And then the other thing I would think about too, when you guys research MFA programs, think about location, because location matters. I don't think it matters so much for undergrad, because I think in undergrad, you're more focused on the study, but again, it's that professional networking part of it. And so let's say, for example, you really have your eyes set on the New York City art scene. If that's important to you, go to grad school in New York City. Don't go to grad school in Kansas. That is not a good idea, because if you go to graduate school in New York City, you're surrounded by people who live there. That's where you're going to make your connections. If you go to graduate school in Kansas and you want to go into New York City, it's almost like you have to start all over again. There are some exceptions. For example, Yale is one of the top MFA programs. It is not in New York City, but it's very close, and there are a lot of faculty at Yale who live in New York City. So this is not applicable to every single school necessarily, but definitely think about the location. And by the way, if you guys would like further commentary and more content on MFA portfolios, we are preparing new materials for artprof.org, because I know a lot of people have been requesting this information. And so just leave in the comments below any specific questions or anything that you guys want us to cover regarding MFAs. Okay, so to sign off, I just want you guys to remember that you can purchase a critique for an MFA or a BFA application. We have artist website critiques, Instagram critiques, we have Skype calls, we have Skype chats. These are all professional development resources that you guys can take advantage of for a fee. And then also, we hope that those of you guys who are supporting us on Patreon continue to do so. Please help us with our budget, because our site is 100% free. We want to make this accessible to everybody, but the only way to do that is through these donations, so we keep our budget alive, so we keep our content alive. So anyway, hope you guys will consider that, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye.